A father's poker hand turned cold in the lamplight, and 17-year-old Lena Carter realized with sick certainty that she was about to become the bet. Across the table sat a man who didn't look at her like property, which somehow made it worse. Because when her father shook hands with the Apache stranger and wiped his debt clean, Lena understood she'd just been traded like livestock, and the desert stretching beyond that door would swallow her whole. But what she didn't know yet, what would shake everything she thought she understood about captivity and choice, was that the man who took her wasn't looking for something to own. If you want to see how far a girl can fall before she learns to stand on her own terms, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button, drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. And let's walk this hard road together. The cards hit the table with the sound of bones breaking. Lena heard it from the kitchen where she'd been scrubbing plates in water gone cold an hour ago, her hands raw and her back aching from a day that started before sunrise and wouldn't end until her father either passed out or found another bottle. The noise from the main room had been building all night, voices getting louder, laughter getting meaner, the particular kind of tension that came when men had too much whiskey and not enough sense. She dried her hands on her apron and stood in the doorway, just watching. The saloon was nearly empty now, just her father and three other men hunched around a table slick with spilled liquor and tobacco stains. Her father's face was flushed, that dangerous color that meant he was past reasoning with, past anything except the next hand. "I'm good for it," he was saying, his words slurring together. "I got property, I got assets." The man across from him didn't even blink. He was younger than the others, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back and skin the color of desert clay. His clothes were worn but clean, and he sat perfectly still in a way that made Lena think of a hawk watching field mice. "You got nothing, Carter," said the man to her father's left, a ranch hand named Pike, who'd been drinking here since before Lena was born. "You lost the store last month. You ain't got 2 coins to rub together." Her father's hands were shaking. "I got the building, the inventory, mortgaged twice over," Pike said. "Everybody knows it." Lena should have walked away, should have gone upstairs to the cramped room she shared with her father and locked the door and pretended she didn't hear whatever was about to happen. But something kept her frozen in that doorway, her heart starting to hammer against her ribs. The dark-haired man finally spoke. His voice was quiet, almost soft. "The debt is $400, Mr. Carter. You have anything worth that?" Her father's eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal. They landed on Lena. "No. I got—" He stopped, swallowed. "I got a daughter." The room went silent. Pike laughed, but it sounded forced. "Jesus, Carter, you drunk or just stupid?" Her father wasn't looking at Pike. He was staring at the dark-haired man, and there was something terrible in his eyes, something desperate and broken that Lena had never seen before, not even in the worst times. "She's 17, her father said. "Strong. Good cook. Keeps house. She's worth more than 400. Easy." Lena's throat closed. She tried to move, tried to speak, but her body had turned to stone. The dark-haired man's expression didn't change. He looked at her for the first time, his gaze steady and unreadable. She felt stripped naked under that look, even though he wasn't studying her the way the other men in town did. He was just seeing her. "That's not a trade," he said finally. Relief crashed over Lena so hard she had to grab the doorframe. "But—" The man held up one hand and her father fell silent. "I'll pay your debt. 400 cleared. In exchange, your daughter comes with me. Not as property, as—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "As someone under my protection." "The hell's the difference?" Pike muttered. The dark-haired man ignored him. "She can leave whenever she wants, but the debt is paid either way. Those are my terms." Her father was nodding before the man finished talking. "Done. Yes. Absolutely." "No." Lena's voice came out strangled, barely a whisper. She tried again, louder. "No, you can't. You don't get to—" "Lena, hush." Her father wouldn't look at her now. "It's done." "It's not done. I'm not going anywhere with—" She turned to the dark-haired man, fury finally breaking through the shock. "I don't even know your name." "Cale Redhawk," he said simply. "I don't care. You can't just— People aren't for trading." "No," Kyle agreed. "They're not." He stood, moving with an easy grace that made her think he'd be fast if he needed to be. "But your father made a choice. Now you get to make yours." My choice? Lena's laugh came out sharp and bitter. What choice? Stay here with him or go with you? That's not a choice. It's more than you had 5 minutes ago, Kyle said. The truth of it hit her like a fist. Because he was right. Her father had already sold her. The only question now was whether she went screaming or walking. She looked at her father, really looked at him. Saw the broken man who'd been drinking himself to death for the past 10 years, ever since her mother died. The man who'd forgotten he had a daughter, except when he needed someone to cook or clean or cover for him when the creditors came calling. The man who'd just traded her to a stranger for $400. Something inside her broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet snap, like a rope fraying through its last thread. "I'll pack," she said. Her voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. Kyle nodded once. "We leave at dawn." She didn't sleep. Couldn't. She sat on her thin mattress in the dark and tried to understand what had just happened, but her mind kept skipping like a broken record. Sold. Traded. Given away like furniture. When the first gray light crept through the window, she heard boots on the stairs. Heavy steps. Uncertain. Her father pushed open the door without knocking. "Lena, He stopped, his eyes bloodshot and hollow. "I didn't have a choice." She stared at him. Didn't speak. The debt was crushing me. They were going to take everything. This way, at least. At least you'll be taken care of. Taken care of. She tested the words, tasted their bitter edge. Like a dog. Like livestock. It's not like that. Then what's it like, Pa? She stood, her hands clenched into fists. Tell me. Make me understand how selling your daughter squares with being taken care of. He flinched. Red Hawk's a good man. I asked around after he left. He's got land, got a homestead up in the Red Hills, keeps to himself, but folks say he's fair. Folks say? Lena grabbed her canvas bag, the only one she owned, and started cramming clothes into it. Well, that makes it all fine then. Don't be like this, she whirled on him. How should I be? Happy? Grateful? I'm your father. No. The word came out flat and final. You were my father. Now you're just the man who traded me for drinking money. His face crumpled. For a second, she almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I never wanted this, he whispered, but you did it anyway. She pushed past him, bag slung over her shoulder. That's what matters. Kyle was waiting outside with 2 horses, both lean and rangy, the kind built for distance. He'd tied a bedroll and supplies to one of them. When he saw her, he just nodded toward the second horse. You know how to ride? Enough. That'll do. She looked back at the building one last time. Her father stood in the doorway, a shadow of a man, already halfway to forgotten. She waited for some feeling to rise up. Grief, anger, anything. But there was just emptiness. Cale offered his hand to help her mount. She ignored it, pulling herself up on her own. The leather was worn smooth under her hands, and the horse shifted beneath her weight, testing her. Easy, she murmured, and the animal settled. Kyle swung onto his own horse like he'd been born on one. We've got a long ride. 3 days if the weather holds. You need anything before we go? Freedom, Lena said, but I guess that's not on offer. His jaw tightened, but he didn't rise to the bait. Let's ride. They headed east toward the rising sun and the desert that stretched beyond the valley like an ocean made of dust and stone. Lena didn't look back again. The first day was brutal. The sun climbed fierce and white, baking everything it touched. Lena's skin burned, her throat turned to sand, and every muscle in her body screamed from hours in the saddle. Kyle rode ahead, not speaking, just a dark shape against the endless horizon. They stopped once at midday, in the shade of rocks that barely cut the heat. Kyle handed her a canteen without a word. She drank, the water metallic but cold enough to hurt her teeth. How much further? She asked. 2 days. That's all you're going to say? 2 days? He looked at her then, his expression unreadable. What do you want me to say? I don't know. Something. Anything. She capped the canteen and shoved it back at him. You bought me. Least you could do is talk to me. I didn't buy you. Semantics. No. He stood, brushing dust off his pants. Words matter. I paid your father's debt. You're not property. Then what am I? He was quiet for a long moment. Someone who deserves better than what she got. The words hit her sideways. She'd been braced for cruelty, for demands, for the inevitable moment when he'd show his true colors. But there was something in his voice, not pity, exactly, more like understanding. She didn't know what to do with that. They rode on. What? That night, Kael made camp in a hollow between hills where the wind couldn't reach. He built a small fire, efficient and quick, and set about making food. Lena sat on a rock and watched him, trying to figure out his angle. Men always had angles. He cooked something simple, beans and coffee, bread that he must have packed that morning. When it was ready, he handed her a tin plate without ceremony. Eat. She was hungry enough that pride didn't matter. The food was plain but good, and she ate every bite. Kael settled on the other side of the fire, his back against his saddle. "You don't have to be scared," he said after a while. Lena's laugh was sharp. "That's what all the scary men say. I'm not going to hurt you. You already did. You took me from my home. Your home." He said it gently, but the skepticism was clear. "That place where your father drank away every dollar and left you to clean up his mess?" She wanted to argue, but couldn't, so she went on the attack instead. "Why'd you do it? Why pay all that money for this?" Kael poked at the fire with a stick, sending up sparks. "I had my reasons." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got tonight." She studied him across the flames. His face was hard to read, all angles and shadows, but there was something in his eyes that wasn't cruel. Tired, maybe. Sad, even. But not cruel. "Are you going to hurt me?" she asked, her voice smaller than she wanted it to be. "No." "Are you going to touch me?" "Not without your permission." "Then what do you want from me?" He met her gaze directly. "Nothing you don't want to give." It should have been a relief, but instead it just confused her more, because she had no framework for this. Men who wanted nothing made no sense in her world. "I don't believe you," she said. "You don't have to." He lay back, tipping his hat over his eyes. "But you'll see soon enough. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's harder than today." She wanted to press him, to demand real answers, but exhaustion was dragging at her bones, and the fire was warm, and despite everything, she didn't think he was lying. So she wrapped herself in the blanket he'd left near her saddle and lay down under stars so thick they looked like spilled salt. Just before she fell asleep, she heard him speak again, so quiet she almost missed it. "I'm sorry this happened to you." She didn't respond, didn't know how to, but somewhere deep in her chest, something tight and hard loosened just a fraction. The second day was worse. The terrain turned rough, all broken rock and thorny brush that tore at their clothes and spooked the horses. The sun was relentless, and Lena's water ran out before noon. Kael shared his without comment, but it wasn't enough to cut the thirst. She was lightheaded by the time they stopped for the night, swaying in the saddle. Kael caught her elbow as she dismounted. "Steady." "I'm fine," she muttered, even though she clearly wasn't. He made her sit while he set up camp, and this time he mixed something into her water, some kind of powder that turned it cloudy but tasted like mint and salt. "Drink all of it," he ordered. "What is it?" "Medicine. For heat and dehydration. Drink." She did, and within minutes the fog in her head started to clear. Kael watched her carefully, and only when he seemed satisfied did he turn to his own needs. "You knew I was struggling," Lena said. "Earlier. You could tell. You're not used to desert riding. So why didn't you say something?" He glanced at her. "Would you have listened?" "Probably not," she admitted to herself. She'd been too busy being angry, too wrapped up in her fear and resentment to pay attention to her body's warnings. "Thank you," she said grudgingly. He just nodded. They ate in silence again, but this time it felt less hostile. Just quiet. Lena found herself stealing glances at him, trying to puzzle him out. He moved with a kind of economy, no wasted motion, everything deliberate. There were scars on his hands, old ones that had healed white against his skin. "How long have you been out here?" she asked. "In the desert or in this life?" "Both, I guess." "I was born in these hills," he said. "Left for a while, came back." "Why?" His expression shuddered. "Same reason anybody comes back to a place. Because it's home, even when it hurts." She understood that more than she wanted to admit. "What about you?" he asked, surprising her. "You grow up in that valley?" "Born there. Never left until now." She pulled her knees to her chest. "My mother died when I was 7. After that, it was just me and Pa. He used to be different, used to care about things. What changed? Her dying, I think. He just folded in on himself, started drinking, stopped seeing me as anything except extra weight." Cale was quiet for a moment. "Some people break when they lose what they love. They don't know how to carry the grief, so they try to drown it instead. Is that what happened to you?" His jaw worked. "Something like that." She wanted to push, to ask more, but something in his face warned her off. So she just sat with him in the firelight and tried not to think about what waited at the end of this journey. Chat. They reached his land on the 3rd day, just as the sun started its long fall toward the horizon. Lena had been expecting something rough, a shack maybe, or a lean-to barely standing. What she found instead took her breath away. The homestead sat in a valley between red hills, sheltered from the worst of the wind. There was a house, small but solid, built from adobe and wood with a covered porch that wrapped around 2 sides. A barn stood nearby, and beyond that, a corral with 3 horses. Gardens stretched along the southern wall, organized in neat rows, and she could see the silver line of a stream cutting through the property. It was beautiful. Remote and harsh, yes, but beautiful. "This is yours?" she asked. "Ours now," Cale said. "If you're staying." She dismounted slowly, her legs shaky after 3 days of riding. "You keep saying things like that, like I have a choice." "You do. Where would I even go?" "There's a town 2 days south. I'll take you there myself if that's what you want. Give you money to start over." Lena stared at him. "You do that? Just let me go?" "I told you, you're not property." She looked at the house again, at the gardens, at the way the evening light turned everything gold and warm. It wasn't freedom, exactly, but it was more than she'd had before. "I'll stay," she said. "For now." "Fair enough?" He showed her inside. The house was simple but well made, with thick walls that would keep out heat and cold both. There was a main room with a fireplace, a kitchen area with a proper stove, and 2 smaller rooms branching off. He gestured to one of them. "That's yours. I'll take the other." Her room had a real bed, not a mattress on the floor. A dresser. A window that looked out over the valley. It was more than she'd ever had. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. Cale stood in the doorway, backlit by the dying sun. "Because nobody should have to live the way you were living, and because—" He paused. "Because I know what it's like to have your choices taken away." Before she could respond, he turned and left her alone. Lena sat on the edge of the bed and put her face in her hands. She'd been braced for violence, for captivity, for all the terrible things she'd imagined on the long ride here. But this quiet kindness, this strange man who asked for nothing, she had no defenses against this. For the first time since her father's cards hit that table, she let herself cry. The days fell into a rhythm. Cale woke before dawn and worked until dark, tending the horses, fixing fences, maintaining the irrigation channels that fed his gardens. He didn't ask Lena to help, but she found herself drifting outside anyway, watching him work. On the 4th day, she picked up a shovel and started clearing weeds from the vegetable beds. Cale looked over but didn't comment, just kept working. By the end of the week, they'd fallen into an unspoken partnership. She took over the garden and the cooking, not because he demanded it, but because it gave her something to do besides sit in that beautiful room and think about everything she'd lost. He was good company, in his way. Didn't talk much, but when he did, his words were careful and true. He taught her things without making it feel like lessons. How to read the weather and the color of the sky, how to tell which plants were good for eating and which would kill you, how to move quiet so the desert creatures didn't scatter. At night they ate together, and sometimes he'd tell her stories. Not fairy tales, but real things. Stories about his childhood in these hills, about the time before the wars came and changed everything. Stories about his people, the Apache, and what it meant to belong to a place so completely that leaving felt like cutting off a limb. "My mother used to say the land remembers," he told her one night, "every footstep, every birth, every death. It all goes into the earth, and the earth holds it. That's why you can't really own land. Best you can do is borrow it for a while, treat it with respect, and hope it lets you stay. Lena thought about that. Do you think it'll let me stay? Do you want it to? She looked out at the valley, dark now except for the stars. I don't know yet. That's honest, at least. 2 weeks in, a storm rolled through. Lena had never seen anything like it. The sky turned the color of a bruise, and the wind came howling down from the hills like something alive and angry. Kyle battened down everything that could blow away and brought the horses into the barn. Stay inside, he told her. This one's going to be rough. She watched from the window as the storm hit. Rain came in sheets so thick she couldn't see 10 feet beyond the porch. Lightning split the sky and thunder shook the walls. It was terrifying and magnificent all at once. Then she heard the crack. It came from the barn, the sound of wood splintering. Kyle was already moving, grabbing his coat. Don't, Lena said. It's too dangerous. The horses, was all he said before he was gone. She watched him disappear into the storm, her heart in her throat. Minutes passed like hours. She paced the room, jumping at every sound. When he finally came back, he was soaked through and limping. Blood ran down his temple from a gash she couldn't see clearly. You're hurt, she said. Tree branch came through the roof, got the horses out. He swayed on his feet. Lena moved without thinking, catching his arm and guiding him to a chair. Sit down before you fall down. She found clean cloth and water and set about cleaning the wound. It wasn't as bad as it looked, but head wounds always bled like murder. Her hands were shaking. You could have died out there, she said. The horses? I don't care about the horses. The words burst out of her before she could stop them. I care about you, you stupid, stubborn man. You don't get to just die for livestock. He caught her wrist, gentle but firm. Lena. She realized she was crying again, tears mixing with the rain still dripping from both of them. I didn't ask for this, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't ask to care what happens to you. I know. So why do I? He didn't answer, just looked at her with those dark, steady eyes, and she saw something there she hadn't let herself see before, something that made her breath catch. The storm raged outside, but in that small room, everything went still. I'm not going to hurt you, he said again, like a promise. I know, she whispered, and she meant it. His hand came up slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and brushed a strand of wet hair from her face. His thumb traced the curve of her cheek, feather light. I didn't bring you here to trap you, he said. I brought you here because when I looked at you in that saloon, I saw someone drowning. And I've been drowning too for so long I forgot what breathing felt like. What are you saying? I'm saying you can leave whenever you want, but I'm hoping you'll stay. Not because you owe me, not because you have nowhere else to go, but because you want to. Lena's chest felt too tight, too full. I'm scared. Of me? Of this. Of feeling things I shouldn't feel. There's no shouldn't, Kyle said. There's just what is. She thought about her father's cards hitting that table. Thought about the long ride through the desert. Thought about the past 2 weeks of working side by side with this strange, quiet man who asked for nothing and gave everything. I want to stay, she said. Not forever. Not yet. But for now, I want to stay. His smile was small but real. Then stay. She finished bandaging his head in silence, but it was different now, charged with something she didn't have words for yet. That night, lying in her bed listening to the storm fade, Lena realized something had shifted. She wasn't his captive anymore. Wasn't the girl who'd been traded like livestock. She was just Lena. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, that felt like enough. The weeks that followed were the strangest of Lena's life. Kyle kept his distance, respectful to the point of infuriating. He never pushed, never presumed. Just worked alongside her during the day and sat with her by the fire at night, teaching her the names of constellations and telling her stories about the desert. She started to learn the rhythms of this life. How to preserve food for the winter months. How to read the tracks animals left in the dust. How to be comfortable in silence. But more than that, she started to learn Kyle. She learned he was an early riser who greeted the sun like an old friend. That he sang sometimes while he worked, old songs in a language she didn't know but that sounded like the wind through canyon rocks. That he was deadly with a rifle but avoided killing anything he didn't plan to eat. That he had nightmares sometimes, waking in the dark with a gasp he thought she couldn't hear through the walls. She learned that he'd been a scout during the wars, that he'd seen things that carved hollows in a man's soul, that he'd lost people he loved, a wife, a child, though he didn't speak of it directly. She pieced it together from the things he didn't say, from the careful way he avoided certain topics. And she learned that despite everything life had taken from him, he still believed in something. Honor, maybe. Or just the idea that you could build something good from broken pieces. One evening, a month after she'd arrived, they were sitting on the porch watching the sun paint the hills in shades of copper and gold. Lena had been thinking about her father, wondering if he ever regretted what he'd done. "Do you think people can change?" she asked. Kyle considered the question. "I think people can choose to be different than they were, whether that's change or just revealing what was always there." He shrugged. "I don't know. Have you changed?" "I hope so. The man I was before, he's not someone I want to be anymore." "Because of what you lost?" "Because of what I did," he corrected quietly. "Loss doesn't make you a better person. It just makes you hurt. What you do with that hurt, how you carry it, that's what matters." Lena thought about her own hurt, the anger she'd carried for so long toward her father, toward the world that had dealt her such a poor hand. "I'm tired of being angry," she said. "Then put it down." "It's not that simple." "No," Kyle agreed. "But it is that hard. And hard is different from impossible." She looked at him. This man who'd paid $400 to free her from one cage without realizing he was offering her the key to another. A better one, maybe. One she was choosing to step into. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For seeing me. Not just the girl my father traded, but me." Kale's expression softened. "That's the easiest part, Lena. You're not hard to see." The words settled over her like a blanket, warm and unexpected. And sitting there in the fading light, watching the desert turn from gold to purple to black, Lena felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. It was fragile and new, like a seedling pushing through hard ground. But it was there. And for now, that was enough. The first frost came in October, early enough to catch Lena off guard. She woke to find the water barrel outside frozen solid and her breath making clouds in the air inside her room. Winter in the desert wasn't something she'd thought much about, but Kyle moved through it like he'd been expecting it all along. "We need to stock up," he said over breakfast. "There's a trading post about half a day's ride north. We'll go tomorrow if the weather holds." Lena looked up from her coffee. "We? Unless you'd rather stay here alone." She thought about it. The homestead felt safe now, familiar, but the idea of being completely isolated if something went wrong made her nervous. "I'll come." They set out before dawn, the air so cold it hurt to breathe. Kyle had given her a heavy coat that smelled like leather and wood smoke, and she wrapped herself in it gratefully. The ride was long and quiet, their horses' breath steaming in the pale morning light. The trading post was bigger than Lena expected, a sprawling collection of buildings clustered around a main store. There were other people there, maybe a dozen, and Lena felt their eyes on her the moment she dismounted. A white girl traveling with an Apache man. She could read the judgment in their stares, the assumptions they were making. Kale noticed too. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Just tied the horses and headed inside. The store was warm and cluttered, packed floor to ceiling with supplies. An older man stood behind the counter, his face weathered like old boot leather. He nodded at Kyle. "Red Hawk, been a while." "Mr. Paulson," Kale's voice was neutral, carefully polite. "Need to stock up for winter." Paulson's eyes slid to Lena. "This your wife?" The question hung in the air, loaded with implications. Lena felt her face heat, but before she could speak, Kyle answered. "She's under my protection." "That right?" Paulson's tone suggested he had his own ideas about what that meant. "Well, your money spends same as anyone's. What do you need?" They spent an hour gathering supplies: flour, sugar, salt, coffee, dried beans, ammunition. Lena picked through fabric bolts, trying to figure out what she'd need for winter clothes. Her fingers lingered on a deep blue wool that reminded her of twilight. "Get what you need," Kyle said quietly, appearing at her elbow. "Don't worry about the cost." "I don't want to take advantage." "You're not." He met her eyes. You work hard. You've earned it. The word settled something in her chest. She took the blue wool and enough muslin for 2 shirts. Outside, loading the supplies onto the pack horse, a voice called out behind them. K.L. Redhawk, never thought I'd see you playing house. Lena turned. A man stood there, tall and rangy, with a mean smile and a badge pinned to his vest. Sheriff, maybe, or deputy. His hand rested casual on his gun belt. K.L.'s expression went flat. Marshal Wade. Heard you took yourself a woman. Didn't believe it until now. Wade's eyes raked over Lena in a way that made her skin crawl. Pretty thing. Where'd you find her? That's not your concern. Everything in this territory is my concern. Wade stepped closer. You buy her? Trade for her? Because if there's a transaction involved, that's something I might need to look into. Lena's hands clenched. She opened her mouth to tell this bastard exactly where he could shove his concern, but Kael's hand touched her elbow. A gentle warning. She's here of her own free will, Kael said. His voice was still calm, but something dangerous had crept into it. And unless you've got actual business with me, we're done here. Wade's smile widened. Touchy. Must be love. He turned to Lena. You know what he is, girl? What his people did during the wars? I know enough, Lena said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. More than I need to know about you, apparently. Wade's smile dropped. Careful, sweetheart. A woman alone with a savage, bad things can happen. You ever need help, you just holler. I'll come running. She won't, Kael said. There was finality in it, like a door closing. Wade held his stare for a long moment, then spat into the dust and walked away. Lena's heart was hammering. What was that about? Old history. Kael finished securing the supplies, his movements tight with controlled anger. Wade was a soldier during the conflicts. Saw action against Apache raiders. He's got reasons to hate me, and I've got reasons to hate him back. Did you... She stopped, not sure how to ask. Fight against people like him? Kael swung onto his horse. Yeah, I did. Killed some of them too when I had to. War doesn't care much about your preferences. They rode in silence for a while. Lena kept thinking about Wade's words, about the assumptions everyone made when they looked at her and Kael together. She'd been so focused on her own situation, her own fears, that she hadn't really considered what this looked like from the outside. Do people always react like that? She asked finally. Some do. Most just avoid me altogether. Doesn't that get lonely? Kael's laugh was brief and humorless. I've been lonely in rooms full of people. Being alone isn't the same thing. No, Lena agreed quietly. It's not. When they got home, the sun was setting, painting the valley in shades of amber and rust. Kael helped her unload the supplies, and they worked together to store everything properly. Flour in sealed containers, fabric wrapped carefully, ammunition in the dry box. Later after dinner, Lena sat by the fire with the blue wool spread across her lap. She'd never been much of a seamstress, but she could manage basic construction. Kael sat across from her, cleaning his rifle with methodical precision. Thank you, she said, for earlier, with Wade. You handled yourself fine. Still, you could have let me fight my own battles. He looked up. I could have, but partners watch each other's backs. That's how it works. Partners. The word did something strange to her pulse. Is that what we are? I don't know what else to call it. He went back to his rifle. You're not a servant, not a wife, not a prisoner. You work this land same as me. So yeah, partner seems right. Lena studied him across the firelight, this complicated man who'd bought her freedom with someone else's debt. Can I ask you something? Always. Why did you really pay my father's debt? The truth this time. Kael was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then he set down the rifle and leaned back, his eyes distant. I had a family once, he said. A wife, a daughter. Her name was Morningbird. She was 3 years old when the soldiers came. Lena's breath caught. There was a raid. My people fought back. It got bloody fast. I was out hunting miles away when I heard the guns. His voice had gone flat, emotionless. By the time I got back, it was over. They'd burned the village, killed most of the men, took the women and children. Kael, I tracked them for 2 weeks, found the camp where they were holding survivors. My wife was dead. But Morningbird, she was alive. Scared out of her mind, but alive. He stopped, his hands curling into fists. I tried to get her back, begged, offered everything I had. The commander laughed in my face, said she was better off with civilized people, that I had no rights to her. Lena felt tears burning behind her eyes. I tried to take her by force, got shot for my trouble, nearly died in the desert. By the time I healed up enough to try again, they'd moved her. I spent 2 years searching, never found her. He looked at Lena then, and the pain in his eyes was so raw she wanted to look away. So when I saw you in that saloon, saw your father trading you like livestock, I saw her. Saw every child who'd been torn from their family and turned into property. And I thought, maybe I can't save my daughter, but I can save this one girl, just this one. The words broke something open in Lena's chest. She understood now, understood why he'd been so careful with her, so insistent on her freedom. She wasn't a replacement for what he'd lost. She was a chance at redemption. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be sorry. Just live. Live free and loud and real. That's all I want. She set aside her sewing and crossed to him, kneeling beside his chair. You saved me. You know that, right? Maybe not the way you think, but you did. His hand came up slowly and touched her face, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. We saved each other then. Fair trade. Something shifted between them in that moment. The air felt charged, thick with things neither of them knew how to say. Lena leaned into his touch without meaning to, and his breath hitched. Lena, he said quietly. I should. Don't, she said. Don't pull away. Not right now. They stayed like that, frozen in the firelight, balanced on the edge of something that could change everything. Then Kael's hand dropped, and he stood, putting distance between them. It's late, he said. You should get some rest. Disappointment crashed through her, but she stood too. Yeah, okay. She went to her room and closed the door, then leaned against it, her heart racing. Whatever was building between them, it was getting harder to ignore, and she wasn't sure she wanted to ignore it anymore. The winter deepened, and with it came a different kind of closeness. The work was harder now, breaking ice on the water troughs every morning, keeping the animals fed and warm, making sure the wood supply lasted. They moved through the days side by side, their rhythm so practiced it felt like dancing. Kael taught her to shoot. They set up targets behind the barn, and he stood behind her, adjusting her stance, showing her how to breathe through the recoil. Don't fight the gun, he said, his breath warm against her ear. Let it kick, just ride it out and reset. She fired. The bullet went wide, kicking up dust 6 feet from the target. Too much tension in your shoulders. Relax. I'm trying. Try less. Feel more. She took a breath and fired again. This time the bullet hit the outer edge of the target. Kael's quiet approval hummed through her. Better, again. They practiced until her shoulder ached and her ears rang, but by the end of the session, she could hit the center more often than not. You're a natural, Kael said, unloading the rifle. Or you're a good teacher. Can it be both? She smiled. Yeah, it can be both. Later that week, she was making bread when Kael came in from checking the traps. He had 2 rabbits and a strange expression on his face. What's wrong? She asked. Nothing's wrong. Just, there's a storm coming. Big one. We might be snowed in for a few days. Lena looked out the window. The sky had gone the color of old iron, heavy and threatening. How do you know? The animals know. They're all bedded down, nothing moving. That means it's bad. He was right. The storm hit that night with a fury that shook the walls. Snow came down so thick Lena couldn't see the barn from the window. The wind howled like something dying, and the temperature plummeted. They spent 3 days trapped inside while the storm raged. Kael kept the fire going constantly, and they rationed their movement to conserve heat and energy. There was nothing to do except talk, read the few books Kael owned, and try not to think about how small the house felt with both of them in it. On the 2nd day, cabin fever started to set in. Lena paced the main room, restless and irritable. I feel like a caged animal, she muttered. I know the feeling. Kael was sitting by the fire, whittling something from a piece of wood. But going out there right now would be suicide. I know, doesn't make it easier. Come here. She walked over. He held up the piece of wood. It was taking shape into something, though she couldn't tell what yet. "My grandfather taught me this," he said. "Said it was good for clearing your head. You just let the wood tell you what it wants to be." "That's a nice thought. Try it." He handed her a knife and a fresh piece of wood. "Just take small cuts, don't force it." She sat beside him and tried. The first few cuts were clumsy, but gradually she found a rhythm. It was meditative, the soft scrape of blade against wood, the way shavings curled away like small prayers. They worked in comfortable silence until Lena finally asked what had been on her mind. "Do you ever think about looking for her again? Your daughter?" Kael's hand stilled. "Every day. Then why don't you?" "Because she'd be 12 now. She's probably forgotten me. Probably thinks she's white, that her real parents are whoever raised her. Me showing up would just destroy whatever life she's built." His voice was thick with pain. "Sometimes love means letting go." "That's not fair." "No, but it's real." Lena set down her knife in the wood. "For what it's worth, I think she'd want to know you. I think she'd want to know her father fought for her. Maybe. Or maybe she'd hate me for not fighting hard enough." He looked at Lena. "Either way, I can't change what happened. All I can do is try to make something good out of what's left." "Is that what this is? What we're doing here?" "I hope so." The storm finally broke on the fourth day. They dug themselves out to find the world transformed, everything buried under 3 feet of snow, the hills smoothed and strange. The work of clearing paths and checking on the animals took all day, and by the time they finished, both of them were exhausted. That night, Lena woke to the sound of Kael crying out. Nightmare, she realized. She'd heard him have them before, but never this bad. She got up and padded to his door, pressing her ear against it. He was speaking in his language, words she couldn't understand, but that sounded like pleading. She knocked softly. "Kael, you okay?" The sounds stopped. Silence, then footsteps. He opened the door, his face haggard in the dim light. "Sorry, didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't. I was already up." "A lie, but a kind one. You want to talk about it?" "Not much to say. Same dream I always have." "About your daughter?" He nodded, looked away. "Come on," Lena said. "Let's get some coffee going." They sat at the table in the dark kitchen, neither of them bothering to light more than a single candle. The coffee was terrible, reheated from dinner, but it was warm and gave them something to do with their hands. "I dream I find her," Kael said finally. "She's standing in a field of flowers, just like she used to when she was small. And I call her name, and she turns around. But when she looks at me, there's nothing in her eyes, no recognition. She doesn't know who I am." That's the worst part, isn't it? Not that you lost her, but that she might have lost you too. "Yeah." He wrapped his hands around the cup like he was trying to absorb its heat. "Sometimes I wonder if it would have been better if they'd killed her too. At least then I'd know she wasn't out there somewhere, living a lie." "Don't say that. Don't even think it. Easy to say when it's not your child." Lena reached across the table and took his hand. "You're right. It's not my child. But I know what it's like to lose the only parent who mattered. And I know that even when things are bad, even when you think you'd be better off dead, there's still some part of you that wants to live. She's out there somewhere, Kael, and maybe she doesn't remember you. But maybe somewhere deep down, she does. Maybe she dreams about a man with kind eyes who used to sing her to sleep." His hand tightened on hers. "You really believe that?" "I have to, because the alternative is too sad to think about." They sat like that until the coffee went cold and the candle burned down to nothing. And when Kael finally stood to go back to bed, he squeezed her hand one more time. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not letting me drown in it." After that night, something changed. The walls between them, already thin, started to come down entirely. They talked more, touched more, existed in each other's space with an ease that felt both natural and terrifying. Lena caught herself watching him work, admiring the way his muscles moved under his shirt, the concentration on his face when he was focused on a task. She saw him watching her too, his eyes tracking her movements around the kitchen, lingering on her hands when she braided her hair. The attraction had always been there, humming under the surface, but now it was getting harder to ignore. One afternoon in late November, Lena was carrying water from the well when her foot hit a patch of ice. She went down hard, the bucket flying from her hands. Pain shot through her ankle, sharp and immediate. Kael was there before she could even cry out, lifting her like she weighed nothing. "Don't put weight on it," he ordered, carrying her inside. "It's fine, Let me look." He set her on a chair and knelt in front of her, unlacing her boot with careful hands. When he pulled it off, her ankle was already swelling. He prodded it gently, and she hissed. "Not broken," he said, "but you sprained it good. You're off your feet for the next few days." "I can't just sit around." "You can and you will." His tone left no room for argument. "I'll handle the work. You handle healing." For 3 days, Lena was relegated to the chair by the fire. Kale brought her meals, fresh water, books to read. He wrapped her ankle in cold compresses and made her keep it elevated. It should have felt smothering, being taken care of like this. Instead, it felt safe. On the 3rd night, he was rewrapping her ankle when their eyes met. The air went thick. "It's feeling better," Lena said, her voice coming out rough. "Good." But he didn't let go of her foot. His thumb traced a small circle on her skin just above the bandage. "I don't like seeing you hurt." "I'm okay now, thanks to you." His hand slid higher, just slightly, testing. "Lena, don't," she said. "Don't pull away this time, please." Kale's jaw worked. "You don't know what you're asking." "I know exactly what I'm asking. I'm not—" He stopped, frustrated. "I'm not a good man. I've done things, terrible things. So have I. I left my father to rot without looking back. I've wished him dead 100 times. I'm not looking for a saint, Kael. I'm looking for someone real. You deserve better than me." "Shouldn't I get to decide that?" The question hung between them. Then Kael made a sound low in his throat and leaned forward, his forehead resting against her knee. The gesture was so vulnerable it made her chest ache. "I'm afraid," he said quietly. "Afraid I'll ruin this. Ruin you." Lena's hand found his hair, fingers tangling in it. "You can't ruin what's already broken. And maybe we're both a little broken. But maybe that's okay." He looked up at her then, and the want in his eyes matched her own. "If we do this, we do it knowing what we're getting into. No illusions, no promises except the ones we can keep. I can promise to try. To be better than I was. That's all I need." Kale rose slowly, carefully, giving her every chance to change her mind. When she didn't, when she just looked at him with steady eyes, he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and hungry, months of wanting compressed into a single point. Lena kissed him back just as hard, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. He tasted like coffee and smoke, and when he groaned against her mouth, she felt it all the way to her toes. They broke apart, breathing hard. Kael's eyes were dark, pupils blown wide. "Your ankle is fine," she said. "I'm fine. Better than fine." He kissed her again, softer this time, but no less intense. His hands slid into her hair, tilting her head back, and she opened for him without hesitation. Everything else fell away. The cold, the isolation, the weight of their pasts. There was just this. Just them. When they finally pulled apart, Kale rested his forehead against hers. "We should stop." "Probably. I don't want to." "Then don't." He laughed, the sound breathless and a little broken. "You're going to be the death of me, Lena Carter." "Good," she said. "We'll die together then." They didn't sleep together that night, not in the way that would change everything irrevocably. But Kael carried her to her bed and lay down beside her, holding her close while the fire died and the night deepened. And when Lena woke in the morning to find him still there, his arm around her waist and his breath warm against her neck, she felt something she'd thought was lost forever. She felt chosen, not traded, not trapped, but genuinely wanted. And maybe that was enough to build on. Maybe that was everything. December came in cold and brittle, the kind of cold that made every breath feel like swallowing knives. Lena woke that morning to find frost patterns on the inside of her window, and Kael already gone from her bed. They'd fallen into the habit of sleeping together most nights now, though they still kept to their separate rooms when morning came. It was an unspoken arrangement, this careful dance between what they wanted and what they were ready to claim out loud. She found him outside splitting wood, his breath coming in clouds, his shirt already damp with sweat despite the freezing air. He moved with that same efficient grace he brought to everything, the axe rising and falling in perfect rhythm. You should have woken me, she called from the porch. He looked up, and the smile that crossed his face made her stomach flip. You needed the sleep. Your ankle's still healing. It's been 2 weeks. I'm fine. Humor me. She rolled her eyes but went back inside to start breakfast. The truth was, her ankle did still ache when she put too much weight on it, and the fact that he'd noticed without her saying anything made something warm bloom in her chest. They ate together as the sun climbed higher, pale and watery through the winter sky. Kyle was quieter than usual, his eyes distant. What's on your mind? Lena asked. Storm's coming, bigger than the last one. He pushed his plate away. I need to ride out to the north pasture, make sure the fence line is secure before it hits. Some of the posts were looking weak last time I checked. I'll come with you. Your is fine, she said firmly. And you're not going out there alone. What if something happens? His jaw tightened. Lena, don't argue with me on this. We're partners. Remember? Partners watch each other's backs. He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. Fine. But we leave in an hour, and if you feel any pain, you tell me immediately. They rode out under a sky that looked like old pewter, heavy and threatening. The air had that peculiar stillness that came before big weather, everything holding its breath. The north pasture was a good 2 hours away, rough country full of ravines and rocky outcrops. Cale was right about the fence. 3 posts had rotted through, and another section sagged dangerously. They set to work replacing them, and Lena was grateful for the physical labor. It kept her warm and gave her something to focus on besides the growing pressure in the atmosphere. They were finishing the last post when the wind shifted. It came from the north, sharp and sudden, carrying the smell of snow. We need to go, Kyle said, his voice tight. Now. They mounted quickly and turned the horses toward home, but they'd barely made it half a mile when the first flakes started falling. Within minutes, it became a wall of white, so thick Lena could barely see Kyle's back, even though he was only a few feet ahead. Stay close, he shouted over the wind. She tried, but her horse was spooked, fighting the bit, and her ankle was screaming every time she shifted her weight. The cold bit through her coat like it was made of paper. Then her horse stumbled. It happened fast. 1 second she was in the saddle, the next she was airborne, the world spinning. She hit the ground hard enough to knock the wind out of her lungs, her head cracking against something solid. Pain exploded through her skull, bright and sharp. Lena! Kale's voice sounded far away. She tried to answer but couldn't seem to make her mouth work. Her vision was going dark at the edges, snow and sky blurring together. Strong hands grabbed her shoulders. Lena, look at me. Stay with me. She managed to focus on his face. He looked terrified, and some distant part of her brain thought she'd never seen him scared before. I'm okay, she slurred. The hell you are? You're bleeding. He pressed something against her head. His bandana, she realized. And the pressure made her gasp. Everything felt strange and disconnected, like she was watching this happen to someone else. Can you ride? Kyle asked. Don't think so. He cursed in his language, sharp and vicious. Then he was lifting her, settling her across his horse's saddle before swinging up behind her. His arms came around her, holding her against his chest. I've got you, he said into her hair. Just hold on. The ride back was a nightmare. Every jolt sent fresh pain spiking through Lena's head, and she could feel blood running hot down her neck despite Kyle's makeshift bandage. The storm kept getting worse, the wind howling like something alive and angry. She must have passed out at some point because the next thing she knew, they were at the homestead and Kyle was carrying her inside. He laid her on the bed, his bed, she noticed dimly, and started peeling off her wet clothes with shaking hands. Kyle, she mumbled. Shh, don't talk. Let me work. He got her into dry clothes, then examined her head with careful fingers. She hissed when he touched the wound. Sorry. His voice was rough. It's not as bad as it looked. Head wounds bleed like hell, but the cut's not deep. No sign of skull fracture. How do you know? I've seen enough head injuries to recognize the bad ones. He started cleaning the wound, his touch gentle despite the tremor in his hands. You scared the life out of me. Didn't mean to. I know. He pressed a clean cloth against her head. Hold this. I need to make a proper bandage. She watched him move around the room, gathering supplies. His face was drawn tight with worry, and there was something fierce in his eyes that made her chest ache. Kyle, I'm okay. Really. You fell off a horse in a blizzard and cracked your head open. That's not okay, that's... He stopped, his hands clenching. I can't lose you. The words hung in the air between them, raw and unguarded. You won't, Lena said softly. You don't know that. People die. Especially out here, especially in winter. One wrong step, one bad fall, and his voice broke. Lena reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. Come here. He sat on the edge of the bed, and she pulled him down until his forehead rested against hers. I'm not going anywhere, she said. You're stuck with me. Promise me you'll be more careful. I promise. But you have to promise the same thing. No more going out alone when storms are coming. Deal. He kissed her then, soft and careful, like she might break. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet. I love you, he said, the words tumbling out like he couldn't hold them in anymore. I know it's fast, and I know we're both a mess, but I love you, Lena. I need you to know that. Her heart felt too big for her chest. I love you too. Have for a while now, I think. Yeah? Yeah. He kissed her again, deeper this time, his hand cupping her face with infinite gentleness. When they broke apart, he rested his cheek against her hair. Sleep, he said. I'll watch over you. You need rest too. Later. Right now I just need to make sure you're okay. She wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling at her like a tide. She let her eyes close, Kael's heartbeat steady under her ear, and let herself drift. When she woke, it was dark outside and the storm was still raging. Kael was exactly where he'd been, his arms around her, his eyes open and watchful. You didn't sleep at all, did you? Couldn't. Kael, every time I closed my eyes, I saw you falling. Saw you lying in the snow, not moving. His voice was strained. I can't unsee it. Lena shifted so she could look at him properly. But I'm fine. I'm right here. I know, doesn't stop the fear. She understood that. Fear didn't always make sense, didn't always respond to logic. Then stay with me. We'll keep each other safe. That's all I want, he said. Just that. The storm lasted 3 days, worse than the previous one. They were trapped inside with supplies running low and the cold seeping through every crack in the walls. Lena's head healed slowly, the wound scabbing over and the constant ache fading to a dull throb. On the second day, she developed a fever. It started as just feeling cold, unable to get warm no matter how close she sat to the fire. Then came the shaking, her whole body trembling so hard her teeth chattered. Kael put her back to bed and piled every blanket they owned on top of her. Probably just your body fighting off infection, he said, but she could hear the worry underneath. I'll make some tea. The tea tasted bitter and medicinal, but she drank it all. Kael sat beside her, wiping her face with a cool cloth when the fever spiked, holding her when the chills got too bad. Talk to me, she said through chattering teeth. Tell me something, anything. He thought for a moment. When I was young, maybe 7 or 8, my grandfather took me into the mountains for a vision quest. It's a sacred thing, something boys do to find their path. He paused, his hand smoothing her hair back from her forehead. I was terrified. 3 days alone, no food, just water and whatever wisdom the spirit saw fit to share. What happened? First 2 days, nothing. I sat on this rock ledge watching the sun rise and set and felt like the biggest failure alive. Then on the third night, I saw a hawk. Beautiful thing, red tail feathers, flew so close I could have touched it. It landed right next to me and just looked at me. And I knew, don't ask me how, I just knew that I was supposed to follow it. Did you? Yeah. It led me down this narrow trail I'd never noticed before, to a spring hidden in the rocks. The water was so clear you could see straight to the bottom, and there were fish in it, fat and slow. I caught 3 with my bare hands. He smiled at the memory. Brought them back to camp, and my grandfather took one look at me and started laughing, said the spirits had given me exactly what I needed, even if it wasn't what I expected. What did it mean? That survival isn't about grand visions or mystical knowledge. It's about paying attention, seeing what's in front of you and trusting yourself to act. Lena's eyes felt heavy. I like that story. Good. Hold on to it, because you're going to survive this too. I won't let you do anything else. She wanted to tell him that some things weren't up to him, that fever and infection had their own timeline, but the words wouldn't come, and darkness was pulling at her again. The fever broke on the third night. Lena woke to find herself soaked in sweat, her nightshirt clinging to her skin, but her head was clear for the first time in days. Kyle was slumped in the chair beside her bed, finally asleep, his hand still holding hers. She studied his face in the dim light. He looked exhausted, lines of strain carved deep around his eyes and mouth. How long had he been awake? How many hours had he sat here watching over her, refusing to rest? Kyle, she said softly. His eyes snapped open, instantly alert. What's wrong? Are you? I'm okay. The fever broke. Relief crashed across his face so intensely it was almost painful to witness. He pressed his forehead to their joined hands and just breathed for a long moment. Thank everything holy, he whispered. Hey, she squeezed his fingers. Come up here. He climbed onto the bed beside her, careful not to jostle her, and she curled into him despite the dampness of her clothes. You need dry things, he said. In a minute. Right now I just need this. They lay together in the darkness, listening to the wind finally start to die outside. The worst of the storm was passing. They'd survived it. I thought I was going to lose you, Kael said eventually. When the fever kept spiking, when you stopped making sense, I thought this was it. That I'd brought you here just to watch you die. But you didn't. I'm still here. Because you're stubborn as hell. Takes one to know one. He laughed, the sound wet and broken. I've never been so scared in my life. Not in war, not when I lost my family, never. Because at least then I could fight back. But against fever, against illness, I was helpless. All I could do was sit there and hope. You did more than that. You kept me warm, kept me hydrated, gave me medicine. You fought the only way you could. It didn't feel like enough. It was everything. He kissed the top of her head. Let me get you clean clothes, then you need to eat something. She let him help her change, too weak to be embarrassed by the intimacy of it. Then he brought her broth. When had he made broth? And sat with her while she drank it slowly. How long was I out of it? She asked. 2.5 days. Longest 2.5 days of my life. I'm sorry. Don't apologize for being sick. Just promise me you'll rest until you're fully healed. I promise. The recovery was slow. Lena spent the next week mostly in bed, sleeping long hours and waking to find Kyle always nearby. He read to her from his books, told her stories, brought her meals and medicine. He never complained, never showed frustration at being trapped inside playing nurse. Don't you have work to do? She asked one afternoon. The work can wait. You can't. I'm just lying here. You're healing. That's important work too. She watched him by the firelight, this man who'd bought her freedom and then given her so much more. I don't deserve you. Wrong way around, he said without looking up from the sock he was darning. I'm the one who doesn't deserve you. What if we both deserve each other? What if that's the point? He did look at her then, his eyes soft. Then I guess we're both pretty lucky. By the time Lena was strong enough to move around the house normally, winter had settled in hard and deep. Snow covered everything, and the temperature stayed below freezing even at midday. They fell into new rhythms, forced together by the weather, but choosing to stay close even when they had space. One night, curled up together in Kael's bed, Lena asked the question that had been circling her mind. What happens when spring comes? What do you mean? I mean, what are we? What am I to you, officially? Kyle was quiet for a moment. What do you want to be? I don't know. Your partner, I guess, but also more than that. My wife. The word sent electricity through her. Would that be so bad? Bad? No. Complicated? Yeah. He shifted so he could see her face. Marriage would mean paperwork, legal ties. And given what I am, what you are, it would attract attention. Marshall Wade would have a field day with it. I don't care about Wade. You should. He's the type to cause trouble just because he can. So we do nothing? Just keep existing in this limbo? Kael's hand found her face. We do whatever you want. If you want to be my wife in the eyes of the law, we'll make it happen. If you want to just be us, that's fine too. I don't need a piece of paper to know what you mean to me. Lena thought about it. Marriage meant protection in some ways, vulnerability in others. But not marrying felt like hiding, like being ashamed of what they'd built. I want people to know, she said finally. I want the whole world to know I chose this, chose you. Then we'll make it official. Soon as spring comes and we can get to a preacher. What if there's another way? Something that doesn't require waiting or asking permission. His eyes searched hers. What are you thinking? Your people, the Apache, they have their own marriage ceremonies, don't they? We did. Some still do. Could we do that? Something that means something to you, to us, without needing the law to validate it? Kael's expression shifted, something deep and emotional moving behind his eyes. You'd want that? A ceremony in my tradition? If you'd have me. He pulled her close, his arms tight around her. I'd have you any way I could get you, but yes, I'd be honored. They planned it for the next new moon, when the sky would be darkest and the stars brightest. Kael spent days preparing, teaching Lena the words she'd need to say, explaining the meaning behind each part of the ceremony. It's about balance, he said. Two people choosing to walk the same path, to share burdens and joys equally. There's no ownership, no submission, just partnership. That's all I want, Lena said. The night of the ceremony, they walked out into the snow under a sky so thick with stars it looked like a river of light. Kael had built a small fire in a clearing near the house, and he'd laid out blankets and the few ceremonial items he still owned, a beaded belt that had belonged to his grandfather, a prayer cloth his mother had made. He'd cleaned up, his hair loose and shining, wearing clothes Lena had never seen before. He looked younger somehow, less burdened. You ready? He asked. More than ready. They stood facing each other across the fire, and Kael began to speak in his language. Lena didn't understand all the words, but she caught pieces. Sky, earth, walking together, choosing freely. His voice was strong and clear, carrying into the night. Then it was her turn. She repeated the words he'd taught her, stumbling over the pronunciation but meaning every syllable. Kael's eyes never left hers, and she saw tears tracking down his face. When the words were finished, he took the beaded belt and wrapped it around both their wrists, binding them together. This is temporary, he said in English. A symbol. Tomorrow we'll untie it and go back to being two separate people. But tonight, right now, we're one. Your pain is mine. My joy is yours. We share everything. Everything, Lena repeated. They stood like that for a long time, bound together, the fire crackling between them and the stars wheeling overhead. Then Kael untied the belt and pulled her into his arms. My wife, he said. My husband. They made love there by the fire, on the blankets under the winter sky, and it felt sacred in a way Lena had never experienced. Not rushed or desperate, but slow and reverent, a claiming and a surrender all at once. Afterward, wrapped in blankets and each other, Kael spoke against her hair. I never thought I'd have this again. Love. Partnership. A future worth building. Neither did I. We're both pretty broken, you know. I know. But maybe broken things can still hold water if you piece them together right. He laughed. That's terrible poetry. I'm not a poet. I'm just a girl who got lucky. I'm the lucky one, Kael said. Don't ever doubt that. They stayed out there until the fire died and the cold drove them back inside. And when they climbed into bed together, Lena felt different. Not because anything legal had changed, but because she'd made a choice. A real one. Not forced by circumstance or fear, but born from love and want and the simple human need to belong to someone who sees you completely. She was Kael's wife now, in the way that mattered most. And he was her husband. And whatever came next, they'd face it together. The rest of winter passed in a blur of small moments, mornings waking up tangled together, afternoons working side by side, comfortable in silence, evenings by the fire, talking or reading or just existing in shared space. But as February turned to March and the first signs of thaw appeared, Lena started to feel uneasy. Like something was coming, like the peace they'd built was too fragile to last. She told herself she was being paranoid, that the winter had just been hard and she was jumping at shadows. But late one night she woke to find Kael standing at the window, staring out at the dark hills. What's wrong? She asked. Probably nothing, but his voice was tight. Kael. I saw tracks today, near the north pasture. Boot prints, fresh ones. Her stomach dropped. Someone's watching us? Maybe, Or maybe just a drifter passing through. You don't believe that? No, he admitted. I don't. Lena got out of bed and went to him, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. Whatever it is, we'll handle it. I won't let anyone take you from me. They won't. I'm not going anywhere. But even as she said it, she felt the shadow of something approaching. Change was coming. She could feel it in her bones. And when spring finally broke through, bringing green shoots and running water and the promise of new life, it brought something else too: trouble. The trouble arrived on a Tuesday morning in late March, riding 3 horses and wearing the self-righteous expression of men who believed the law was on their side. Lena was in the garden, turning over soil that had finally thawed enough to work, when she heard the sound of hooves. She straightened, wiping dirt from her hands, and felt her stomach clench when she saw who it was: her father, Marshal Wade, and a third man she didn't recognize, older, with a sheriff's star pinned to his vest. Cale appeared from the barn, his rifle already in hand, though he held it casual, pointed at the ground. He moved to stand between the riders and Lena, his body language utterly calm but his eyes sharp. "Gentlemen," he said, "this is private property." Wade's smile was all teeth. "We're here on official business, Red Hawk. Sheriff Morrison here wants to ask some questions." The older man dismounted, his movements stiff like his joints hurt. He had the look of someone who'd seen too much and stopped caring somewhere along the way. "Mr. Red Hawk," Morrison said, "I'm Sheriff Tom Morrison, Territorial Law. I've received a complaint that you're holding a young woman against her will." Lena's father finally looked at her, and she saw something flicker in his eyes. Shame, maybe, or regret, but not enough to stop what he was doing. "That's my daughter," he said, his voice hoarse. "Been looking for her all winter. When I heard she was here, I knew something wasn't right." "Nothing here isn't right," Kyle said evenly. "She's free to leave any time she wants." "That true, miss?" Morrison asked, looking past Kyle to Lena. She stepped forward, ignoring Kyle's subtle hand gesture to stay back. "My name is Lena Carter, and yes, it's true. I'm here because I choose to be." Her father's face twisted. "You don't know what you're saying, girl. This man, he took you, bought you like livestock." "You sold me like livestock," Lena shot back, her voice hard. "Don't pretend you're here out of fatherly concern. You traded me to cover your debts." Morrison's eyebrows went up. "That true, Carter?" It wasn't like that. I was desperate. Red Hawk offered to help." "He offered to buy your daughter," Wade cut in, clearly enjoying this. $400 for a 17-year-old girl. That's trafficking, Sheriff. That's kidnapping." "I'm 18 now," Lena said. "Been 18 since January, and I wasn't kidnapped. I was rescued." "From what?" Morrison asked. "From him." She pointed at her father. "From a man who drank away everything we had and left me to clean up his messes. From a life where I was worth less than a poker hand." Her father flinched. "Lena, please. No. You don't get to please me. You gave up that right when you shook hands with Kyle and walked away without looking back." Morrison sighed, the sound of a man tired of family drama. "Miss Carter, I need you to understand something. If money changed hands for your person, that's illegal regardless of your consent. I need to know the exact nature of the transaction." "Kyle paid my father's debt," Lena said carefully. "In exchange, I agreed to leave with him, but he never claimed ownership, never forced me to stay. He gave me a home, food, safety, and my own room with a lock on the door that I never needed to use." "She's been brainwashed," Wade said. "Classic case. Doesn't even realize she's a prisoner." Cale's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "Sheriff, you're welcome to search the property. Talk to Lena alone if you want. You'll find no chains, no locks, no evidence of captivity." "I'd like to do just that," Morrison said. He turned to Lena. "Miss Carter, would you walk with me, just you and me, so we can talk freely?" Lena glanced at Kyle. He nodded slightly, though she could see the tension in his shoulders. She turned back to Morrison. "Fine." They walked toward the stream, out of earshot of the others. Morrison moved slow, his eyes taking in everything. The garden Lena had been working, the well-maintained buildings, the horses in the corral. "Nice setup here," he said. "Red Hawk does good work." "We both do," Lena corrected. "This place belongs to both of us now." Morrison stopped walking and faced her. "I'm going to be straight with you, miss. Your father claims you were taken against your will. That Red Hawk has been holding you here all winter. Now, Wade, he's got his own agenda, always has when it comes to Indians. But your father seems genuinely worried. My father's a drunk and a liar, Lena said flatly. He wasn't worried about me when he was gambling away money we needed for food. He wasn't worried when I had to cover for him with creditors. And he sure as hell wasn't worried when he traded me to settle his debts. So you admit there was a transaction. I admit my father made a deal, but Kyle didn't buy me. He freed me. There's a difference. Morrison studied her face. You love him? The question caught her off guard. What? Red Hawk. You love him? Lena's chin came up. Yes, I do. He force himself on you, hurt you in any way? No, never. He's been nothing but kind and respectful. Then why's your father so convinced something's wrong? Because he can't imagine someone treating me better than he did. Because admitting I'm better off here means admitting he failed me. Lena's voice cracked slightly. Maybe he does feel guilty. Maybe that's why he's here. But it's too late. I don't need his protection or his approval. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. You're 18, you said? Yes, sir. And you want to stay here with Red Hawk? More than anything. He nodded slowly. All right then. That's all I needed to hear. They walked back to where the others waited. Wade looked smug. Her father looked sick. And Kyle looked like he was preparing for a fight. Well? Wade demanded. What'd she say? Morrison mounted his horse before answering. She says she's here voluntarily, says Red Hawk's treated her well. She's 18 and of sound mind, so legally there's nothing to pursue. That's bullshit, Wade exploded. You can't just... I can and I am, Morrison said, his voice hard now. Miss Carter is an adult making her own choices. Unless you've got evidence of actual crimes, and feelings don't count, Wade, we're done here. Her father finally found his voice. Lena, please, come home. I can be better. I'll stop drinking, I swear. Just come home. Something in his voice almost made her waver. Almost. But then she remembered all the times he'd promised before, all the times she'd believed him and been disappointed. I am home, she said quietly. This is my home now. With him, with a savage who... Careful, Kyle said. And there was something dangerous in that single word. Her father's mouth snapped shut. He looked at Lena one more time, and she saw the moment he gave up. His shoulders sagged, and he suddenly looked much older. I'm sorry, he said, for everything. You deserved better than what I gave you. Yeah, Lena said. I did. Morrison turned his horse. We're leaving. Carter, Wade, let's go. Wade's face was purple with rage. This isn't over, Red Hawk. I'll be watching you. One wrong move. Then you'll have a long, boring job, Kyle said, because we're not giving you ammunition. They rode away, and Lena stood watching until they disappeared over the rise. Then her knees went weak, and she sat down hard on the ground. Kyle was beside her immediately. You okay? I don't know. Maybe? She looked up at him. Is it really over? For now. Wade won't let it go easy, but Morrison seems reasonable. And you're legally an adult, so unless they manufacture evidence, they can't force you to leave. My father looked so broken. He is broken. Has been for a long time. But that's not your fault, and it's not your job to fix him. Lena nodded, but her chest felt tight. Part of me wanted to forgive him, to believe he could change. Maybe he can. People surprise you sometimes. But you don't have to stick around to find out. You've earned the right to protect yourself first. She leaned into him, letting his solid presence ground her. Thank you for not fighting them, for letting me handle it. You didn't need me to fight for you. You fought for yourself just fine. They sat there for a while, the spring sun warm on their faces, and gradually the tension started to ease. It wasn't over, not really. Wade would keep looking for ways to cause trouble, and her father's appearance had stirred up things she'd tried to bury, but they'd survived the confrontation, and that was something. That night, lying in bed, Lena couldn't sleep. Her mind kept replaying the scene, her father's voice, the way Wade had looked at her like she was damaged goods. You're thinking too loud, Kale murmured beside her. Sorry, can't shut my brain off. Talk to me. What's eating you? She rolled to face him. What if they come back? What if Wade finds some way to make trouble? Then we deal with it, same as we dealt with today. But what if it's not that simple next time? What if they bring more men, or make up charges, or… Lena, he cupped her face. We can't live in fear of what ifs. All we can do is handle what's in front of us. I'm scared, she admitted. I finally have something good, something real, and I'm terrified someone's going to take it away. I know that feeling, lived with it for years after I lost my family. His thumb stroked her cheek. But here's what I learned. Fear doesn't prevent bad things from happening. It just keeps you from enjoying the good things while you have them. So what do I do? Why, you live, you love, you build a life worth fighting for, and if trouble comes, you face it. But you don't let it poison what you've got right now. She kissed him, slow and deep, trying to pour all her complicated feelings into it. When they broke apart, she felt steadier. I love you, she said. Love you too. Now sleep. Tomorrow, we've got work to do. What work? Spring planting. The garden won't sow itself. She laughed despite herself. You're very romantic, you know that? I have my moments. The next few weeks were busy. The land was waking up, demanding attention, and they threw themselves into the work. Planting vegetables, mending fences, checking on the horses that had gotten thin over winter. It was exhausting, but Lena welcomed the physical labor. It kept her mind occupied and her hands useful. One afternoon in early April, she was hauling water from the stream when she saw a rider approaching. Her heart jumped into her throat until she realized it wasn't Wade or her father. This was a woman, middle-aged, riding a sturdy mare. Kael came out of the barn, his hand resting on his knife belt. Can I help you? The woman dismounted, moving with the ease of someone who'd spent her life on horseback. You Kael Redhawk? I am. Name's Sarah Blackwood. I run a ranch about 20 miles east. Heard you might be willing to break horses for pay. Kael's eyebrows went up. Where'd you hear that? Paulson at the trading post said you're the best he's seen. She glanced at Lena. This your wife? She is, Kael said without hesitation. Sarah nodded. Good. A man needs a good woman to keep him honest. She turned back to Kyle. I've got 3 Mustangs that need gentling. Wild as hell, but good stock. I'll pay $50 for all 3 if you can make them rideable. 50's fair, Kael said. When do you need them done? No rush. I can bring them by next week if that works. Works fine. Sarah remounted. Pleasure doing business with you, Redhawk. And don't mind Wade if he comes sniffing around. He's all bark and no bite, long as you don't give him a reason. After she left, Lena turned to Kael. You break horses? Used to. Haven't had much call for it lately. Why didn't you tell me? He shrugged. Didn't come up, but it's good money and it'll help us build up a reserve. Never know when we might need it. The horses arrived the following week and they were everything Sarah had promised. Wild, beautiful, and mean as hornets. Kael spent hours in the corral with them, patient and methodical, working through their fear and aggression until they started to trust him. Lena watched from the fence, amazed by his skill. He never hit them, never used force, just persistence and calm and an understanding of what they needed to feel safe. You're good at this, she called during a break. It's not that different from people, he said, wiping sweat from his face. Fear makes everything harder. You take away the fear, the rest comes easier. By the end of the month, all 3 horses were broke to saddle. Sarah came to collect them and paid in gold coins that felt heavy in Lena's hand. You ever want more work? You let me know, Sarah said. And if you hear of any good ranch hands looking for employment, send them my way. I'm always short-staffed. After she left, Kael and Lena counted out the money at the kitchen table. $50, Lena said, still slightly awed. That's more than I've ever seen at once. It's a start, Kael said. Keep this up. Maybe we can expand. Get more horses, more land. You want to expand? I want to build something that lasts, something that's ours. He reached across the table and took her hand. Something we can pass down someday. The implication hung in the air. Someday. Children. A future that stretched beyond just surviving. I'd like that, Lena said softly. Yeah? Yeah. That night they made love with a new kind of urgency. Not desperate, but purposeful. Like they were sealing a promise, claiming a future they were actively building together. May brought warm winds and the first real heat. The garden exploded with growth, and Lena spent long days tending it, her hands constantly dirty, her back always aching. But it was good work, satisfying in a way nothing had been before. She was pulling weeds one morning when she heard horses again. Multiple horses, moving fast. She straightened, her heart sinking when she saw Marshal Wade leading a group of 5 men. Kyle was at the north pasture, too far to reach quickly. Lena wiped her hands on her apron and walked to meet them, trying to look calm even though her pulse was racing. Wade dismounted, his smile vicious. "Morning, Mrs. Red Hawk. Or should I say Miss Carter? Hard to know what to call you, seeing as I can't find any marriage record. Call me whatever you want, doesn't change anything." "Doesn't it?" He gestured to the other men. "These are witnesses, upstanding citizens who will testify that you're living in sin with a known criminal." Kael's not a criminal. He killed white soldiers during the conflicts. That makes him a war criminal in my book. The war's been over for years. You can't prosecute someone for fighting in a war. Wade's smile widened. "Maybe not, but I can make life real uncomfortable for people who harbor criminals. Can make it so supplies don't reach you, so ranchers won't do business with you, so you're isolated out here with no help coming." Lena's hands clenched into fists. "What do you want?" "I want you gone. Back to civilization where you belong. This is where I belong. You think you do, but give it time. He'll show his true colors, and when he does, you'll come running, and I'll be waiting. I won't hold my breath." Wade stepped closer, and Lena fought the urge to step back. "You're making a mistake, girl, throwing your life away on a savage who'll never be accepted by decent people. Your children, if you're stupid enough to have them, will be half-breeds. They'll belong nowhere." "Get off my land," Lena said, her voice shaking with rage. "Your land? You don't own anything. You're just playing house with a man who bought you." "I said get off my land." Wade's hand moved toward his gun, and Lena's breath caught. But then a voice called out behind her. "She told you to leave." Cale stood there, his rifle trained on Wade. He must have seen them from the pasture and come running. Wade's hand froze. "Careful, Red Hawk. Threatening a lawman is a crime." "I'm not threatening. I'm defending my property. You're trespassing." "We're conducting an investigation." "No, you're harassing my wife. There's a difference." Kael's voice was steel. "You've got no legal standing here, Wade. Sheriff Morrison already cleared us. So unless you want to explain to him why you're abusing your authority, I suggest you mount up and ride out." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then one of Wade's men cleared his throat. "He's right, Marshal. We got no cause to be here." Wade's face went purple, but he stepped back. "This isn't over." "It is for today," Kael said. They mounted and rode out, and this time Wade didn't look back. When they were gone, Lena's legs finally gave out. Kael caught her, holding her up. "I've got you." "He's not going to stop," Lena said. "He'll keep coming back, keep pushing until something breaks. Then we'll make sure we're not what breaks." But even as he said it, Lena could see the worry in his eyes. Wade was escalating, getting bolder. Eventually something was going to give. That night, they sat out on the porch and watched the sun go down, neither of them speaking. The valley was peaceful, beautiful in the fading light, but Lena couldn't shake the feeling that they were living on borrowed time. "Maybe we should leave," she said finally. "Go somewhere Wade can't reach us. This is our home. I'm not giving it up." Even if staying means constant harassment, constant danger, Kael was quiet for a long time. "My people have a saying, you can run from a wolf, but it'll follow your scent. Better to stand your ground and show your teeth." "What if the wolf has a pack?" "Then you hope your pack is stronger." He pulled her close. "We're not alone, Lena. Sarah Blackwood knows us now. Paulson at the trading post. Even Morrison seemed fair. Wade has enemies too. People who are sick of his bullying. You really think we can outlast him? I think we have to try. Because if we run now, we'll spend the rest of our lives running, and I'm tired of running." Lena understood that. She was tired too. Tired of being afraid, tired of letting other people dictate her life. Maybe Kael was right. Maybe the only way through this was straight ahead. "Okay," she said. "We stay. We fight. Together. Together." The summer stretched hot and long, and Wade kept his distance. But the tension never fully lifted. Every time Lena heard horses approaching, her heart would race. Every stranger at the trading post made her wonder if Wade had sent them. But life went on. They planted more crops, broke more horses, built up their savings. Sarah Blackwood sent them other ranchers looking for horse training, and word spread that Cale Redhawk did good work at fair prices. In July, a young couple showed up asking if they could homestead on the far corner of Cale's land. They were poor, eager, and had nowhere else to go. "We can't pay much," the husband said, "but we're hard workers. We could help with the horses, the crops, whatever you need." Cale looked at Lena. She nodded slightly. "You can have the land," Cale said. "Build your home. In exchange, you help us when we need it, and we'll help you." The couple looked like they might cry. Thank you so much." Their names were Tom and Mary, and they were young, maybe 20, and so in love it was almost painful to watch. They built a small cabin and started breaking ground for their own garden, and suddenly the valley felt less isolated. By August, Lena realized she'd gone nearly 2 months without seeing Wade. Maybe he'd given up. Maybe they'd actually won. She should have known better. The attack came on a moonless night in late August. Lena woke to the smell of smoke and Cale shaking her shoulder. "Fire," he said. "The barn's on fire." They ran outside to find the barn fully engulfed, flames licking into the sky. The horses were screaming inside. "Get water!" Cale shouted, already running toward the barn. "You can't go in there." "The horses will die anyway if you burn with them." But he was already gone, disappearing into the smoke. Lena ran for the well, her heart in her throat, pumping water as fast as her arms could move. Tom and Mary appeared, both of them terrified but ready to help. They formed a line, passing buckets, throwing water on the flames. But it was too much, too fast. The barn was lost. Then Cale emerged from the smoke, leading 2 horses, his face black with soot. He went back in, came out with 2 more, went back again. "Don't!" Lena screamed, but he didn't listen. The roof caved in just as he emerged with the last horse, a shower of sparks and burning timber. He stumbled, fell, and Lena ran to him, pulling him away from the heat. "Are you hurt?" "Cale, look at me." He was coughing too hard to answer. She checked him frantically. Burns on his hands and forearms, his hair singed but nothing life-threatening. They watched the barn burn to the ground, all of them helpless to stop it. When the sun came up, all that remained was a smoking skeleton of charred wood and ash. Tom found the kerosene can hidden in the brush, the one that didn't belong to them. "This was deliberate," he said quietly. Cale stared at the ruins of his barn, his jaw tight. "Wade." "You don't know that for sure," Lena said, even though she did know. They all knew. Who else? Who else would risk killing our horses just to send a message? Lena had no answer. They spent the next week living in the aftermath. The horses were traumatized but alive. The barn was gone, and rebuilding would take time and money they didn't really have. And over it all hung the knowledge that Wade had escalated from harassment to outright violence. "We should report him," Mary said one evening as they all sat around picking at dinner. "To who?" Cale asked bitterly. "Morrison. He's 3 days ride away, and by the time he got here, Wade would have an alibi locked down tight. So we do nothing? We rebuild, and we watch our backs." But Lena could see the defeat creeping into Cale's eyes, and it terrified her more than the fire had. He was losing hope, starting to believe that Wade would eventually win through pure persistence. That night, alone in their bed, Cale held her tighter than usual. "Maybe you should go," he said. "Back east, somewhere Wade can't reach you. I'll give you money, help you start over." "No." "Lena." "No." She turned to face him. "I'm not leaving you. Not for Wade, not for anyone. This is only going to get worse." "Then we'll get worse too. We'll fight dirtier, fight smarter, but I'm not running, and I'm not letting you face this alone." His eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I don't want you hurt because of me. I'm hurt because of Wade. That's different. And I'm choosing to stay and fight back. That's my choice, Cale. Mine." He kissed her then, fierce and desperate, and they made love like they were trying to prove something, prove they were still alive, still together, still fighting. But afterward, lying in the dark, Lena couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of a cliff. And sooner or later, someone was going to push. The push came 2 weeks later, but not from the direction Lena expected. She was hanging laundry in the late morning sun when she saw the riders. Not Wade this time, but Sheriff Morrison with 2 deputies. Her stomach dropped as she lowered the wet shirt back into the basket. Kyle came out of the temporary shelter they'd been using for the horses since the barn burned. His face went carefully neutral when he saw who it was. Morrison dismounted, moving with that same stiff reluctance Lena remembered from before. Mr. Redhawk. Mrs. Redhawk. Sheriff, Kyle said. What brings you out this way? Official business, I'm afraid. Morrison pulled a folded paper from his coat. I've got a warrant for your arrest. The world tilted sideways. Lena grabbed the fence post to steady herself. On what charges? Arson. Destruction of property. The barn fire at the Walton Ranch 3 weeks ago. That's absurd, Lena said. Our barn burned 3 weeks ago. Kyle was here with me. I'm sure he was, Morrison said, but his tone suggested he didn't believe it. But the Walton place burned the same night, and Wade found evidence placing Redhawk at the scene. What evidence? Kyle's voice was dangerously quiet. Morrison looked uncomfortable. A beaded belt, Apache design, found near where the fire started. Lena's blood went cold. The belt. The one from their wedding ceremony. She'd seen Kyle wearing it just days before the fire, and then suddenly it was gone. They'd both assumed it had gotten lost somewhere on the property. That's planted evidence, Kyle said. Wade stole that belt and put it there. Maybe so, but I've still got to bring you in. You'll have a chance to make your case to a judge. When? Lena demanded. When will he see a judge? Circuit judge comes through in 6 weeks. 6 weeks? Her voice cracked. You're going to lock him up for 6 weeks on Wade's manufactured evidence? I don't like it any more than you do, ma'am, but the law's the law. Kyle put his hand on Lena's arm. It's okay. It's not okay. They can't just... Lena. He turned her to face him, his eyes steady, despite the fear she could see underneath. Listen to me. 6 weeks isn't forever. You keep the place running, I'll sit in a cell, and when the judge hears the truth, this falls apart. You really think Wade's going to let it fall apart? He'll bribe the judge, lie under oath, do whatever it takes, then we fight it. But right now I need you to be strong. Can you do that? She wanted to scream, to fight, to grab Kyle and run, but his eyes were asking her to trust him, to believe they could survive this too. So she swallowed her terror and nodded. Okay, I'll be strong. He kissed her forehead. That's my girl. Morrison cleared his throat. I'm sorry, but we need to go. You want to pack anything? Give me 5 minutes, Kyle said. He went inside and Lena followed. In their bedroom, he moved quickly, gathering a few clothes, his grandfather's prayer cloth. His hands were steady, but Lena could see the muscle jumping in his jaw. This is wrong, she said. They can't do this. They can do whatever they want. They've got the law and the guns. He stopped packing and looked at her. But they don't have you, and that's what Wade really wants, to separate us, to break us. Don't give him that satisfaction. What am I supposed to do for 6 weeks? Rebuild. Keep working. Talk to Sarah Blackwood. See if she can help find a lawyer. And for the love of everything, don't try anything stupid like breaking me out. Despite everything, Lena almost smiled. The thought crossed my mind. I know. That's why I'm saying it. He pulled her close. I love you. That doesn't change just because I'm locked up. I love you too. They stood like that until Morrison knocked on the door. Then Kyle pulled away, shouldered his pack, and walked out to face his arrest like he was just going for a ride. Lena watched them leave, Morrison's deputies flanking Kyle like he was dangerous, and felt something harden in her chest. Wade thought he'd won, thought he could use the law to destroy what she and Kyle had built. He was wrong. The first week was the hardest. Lena threw herself into work, rebuilding the barn with Tom's help, tending the garden, caring for the horses. But nights were impossible. The bed felt too big without Kyle, the house too quiet. She'd wake from nightmares about him in a cell, about Wade doing something worse, about losing everything again. On the 8th day, Sarah Blackwood showed up with supplies and news. I heard what happened, she said, unloading bags of flour and sugar. It's horseshit, pardon my language. Everyone knows Wade's got it out for Kyle. Then why won't anyone do anything? Lena demanded. Because Wade wears a badge and most folks are too scared or too indifferent to challenge him. Sarah paused. But not all of us. I've been asking around. Turns out Wade's made a lot of enemies over the years. People who'd love to see him taken down a peg. Can any of them help? Maybe. There's a lawyer in Millerton, name of Charles Green. He's defended Apache clients before. Actually won some cases. I sent him a telegram explaining the situation. He's willing to take it on. Hope flickered in Lena's chest. How much does he cost? $200 for the defense. The hope guttered. They had money saved from the horse breaking, but not that much. I don't have 200. I know, that's why I'm lending it to you. Lena stared. I can't ask you to. You're not asking, I'm offering. Sarah's face was firm. Wade's been a blight on this territory for too long. If helping you take him down costs me $200, that's money well spent. I don't know how to thank you. Thank me by winning. That'll be enough. Green arrived 2 days later, a thin man with sharp eyes and ink-stained fingers. He listened to Lena's account of everything, the original transaction with her father, the harassment, the barn fire, the planted evidence. It's a solid frame job, he said when she finished. Wade's thorough, I'll give him that. Can you beat it? Depends on the judge. If we get Harrison, we've got a chance. He's fair, doesn't care much for Wade, but if it's Stanton, Green shook his head. Stanton's in Wade's pocket. So what do? We build the best case we can. I'll need witnesses who can testify to Kael's character, to his whereabouts the night of the Walton fire. Anyone who saw Wade around your property in the days before. Lena thought hard. Tom and Mary were here the night our barn burned. They can confirm Kael was fighting that fire, not setting another one miles away. Good. Anyone else? Paulson at the trading post might help. He knows Kael, knows he's not the type. I'll talk to him. In the meantime, I'm going to visit Kael, get his version of events. You stay here, keep your head down. Wade's going to be watching for any excuse to add charges. Green left and Lena felt marginally better. At least they had someone fighting for them now, someone who knew how the system worked. But 3 weeks in, disaster struck. Lena was in the garden when Wade rode up alone. Every instinct screamed at her to run inside, grab the rifle, but she forced herself to stand still. Mrs. Redhawk, Wade said, tipping his hat in mock courtesy. How's life treating you without your husband? Get off my property. Now, is that any way to greet a concerned lawman? He dismounted, moving toward her with deliberate slowness. I've been thinking about you, stuck out here all alone, dangerous for a woman by herself. I'm not alone. Tom and Mary are just over the hill. Are they? Funny, I saw them heading into town this morning. Won't be back until tonight, I'd wager. Lena's heart started pounding. What do you want, Wade? Same thing I've always wanted, for you to come to your senses. He was close now, too close. You're wasting your life on a savage who's going to hang for arson. Judge Stanton's hearing the case, by the way. Thought you'd want to know? Her stomach dropped. Stanton. Green had said Stanton was in Wade's pocket. The fix is in, she said flatly. The fix is justice, Wade corrected. Redhawk's going to prison for 20 years minimum. Probably won't survive it, so you've got a choice to make. Waste your youth waiting for a dead man, or move on with your life. I'll wait forever if I have to. Wade's smile dropped. You're really that stupid? You really think love conquers all? I think we're stronger than you, and I think you know it, or you wouldn't be trying so hard to break us. His hand shot out and grabbed her arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. You've got a smart mouth. Someone should teach you to shut it. Lena drove her knee up hard into his groin. Wade went down with a choked gasp, and she ran for the house. She made it to the door before he tackled her from behind, both of them crashing to the porch. You little bitch! She fought, scratching at his face, screaming for help, even though no one was close enough to hear. Wade's weight pinned her down, and panic clawed at her throat. Then a gunshot split the air. Wade froze. Lena turned her head and saw Mary standing 20 feet away, rifle pointed at the sky, her face pale but determined. Get off her, Mary said. Now. This is official business. This is assault, and I'm witness to it. Mary lowered the rifle until it pointed at Wade's chest. So unless you want me to shoot you for attacking a defenseless woman, I suggest you get on your horse and leave. For a long moment, Wade didn't move. Then he stood slowly, brushing dust off his uniform. His face was twisted with rage. You're going to regret this, he said. Probably, Mary agreed. But not as much as you'll regret what happens if you don't leave right now. Wade mounted his horse, his eyes promising violence. This isn't over. It never is with you, Lena said, getting shakily to her feet. But we're still here, still standing, and we'll keep standing long after you're gone. He rode away, and Lena's legs gave out. Mary caught her, helped her inside, made her tea with shaking hands. I thought Tom and I were heading to town, Mary said, but I forgot my shopping list, came back for it. Thank heaven I did. Thank heaven you did, Lena echoed. Her arm was already purpling where Wade had grabbed her. He was going to... I know, but he didn't. You fought back. Not well enough. Well enough to survive. That's what matters. Lena reported the attack to Morrison through Green, but nothing came of it. Wade claimed he'd been investigating reports of trespassing and that Lena had attacked him unprovoked. His word against hers, and his word carried the weight of a badge. But something shifted in the valley after that. Word spread about what Wade had tried, and suddenly people started showing up. Ranchers Lena had never met brought supplies, offered to help rebuild the barn, made it clear they were watching. Paulson closed the trading post for a day to ride out and testify on Kyle behalf. Even Tom and Mary's neighbors, people Lena barely knew, started checking in regularly. Wade's overplayed his hand, Sarah explained. People could ignore harassment, but assault on a woman? That crosses a line. He's made enemies of folks who were neutral before. The trial was set for the first week of October. Green prepared extensively, interviewing witnesses, building timelines, poking holes in Wade's story. But he was honest about their chances. Stanton's going to favor Wade. Our only hope is to make the evidence so obviously manufactured that even Stanton can't ignore it. And if he can ignore it? Green's face was grim. Then Kyle goes to prison, and you wait for an appeal that might never come. Lena visited Kyle once before the trial. Morrison allowed it, though he insisted on being present. Kyle looked thinner, tired, but his eyes lit up when he saw her. You okay? He asked immediately. I'm fine. Worried about you. Don't be. I've survived worse than a jail cell. Morrison cleared his throat. 5 minutes. They sat across from each other, hands joined through the bars, and Lena told him everything. The lawyer, the support from neighbors, Wade's attack. Kyle's face darkened at that last part. He touched you. Mary stopped him before he could do more than grab my arm. When you get out of here, we're going to rebuild our life and let Wade destroy himself. He's making mistakes, Kale. Big ones. People are turning against him. Not fast enough. Maybe not, but it's happening. She squeezed his hands. We just have to survive long enough to see it. I miss you, he said quietly. Miss our bed, our home. Miss watching you work the garden like you're fighting the earth itself. I miss you too, every minute. Morrison shifted. Time's up. Lena stood, but Kyle held on to her hands. Whatever happens at this trial, I need you to know something. Meeting you, loving you, building a life with you, it's been the best thing that ever happened to me. Even if they lock me away for 20 years, I won't regret a single day we had. Her eyes burned. Don't talk like that. You're coming home. Maybe. But if I don't, you are. You have to, because I'm not doing this without you. He pulled her close enough to kiss her through the bars, brief and fierce. Then Morrison was pulling her away, and Kyle was watching her leave with eyes that looked too much like goodbye. The trial started on a cold October morning that felt like the end of the world. The courthouse was packed. Wade's supporters on one side, Kyle's on the other, and a bunch of curious onlookers who just wanted drama. Judge Stanton was exactly what Lena feared, older, stern, and clearly predisposed to believe whatever Wade said. He barely looked at Kyle during the opening statements. Wade testified first, laying out his case with practiced ease. He'd responded to the Walton fire, he said, and found evidence of Apache craftsmanship at the scene. Given Red Hawk's known hostility toward white settlers, it was an obvious conclusion. Green cross-examined hard, pointing out that Wade had no actual proof Kyle had been at the Walton ranch, that the belt could have been planted, that Wade himself had motive to frame Kyle. You've been harassing Mr. Red Hawk for months, haven't you? Green demanded. I've been monitoring a dangerous individual. You burned down his barn. Wade's eyes glittered. I did no such thing. You attacked his wife. She attacked me. I have witnesses. It went on like that for hours, Wade deflecting every accusation, Stanton allowing him far more leeway than he gave Green. By the time the prosecution rested, Lena felt sick. Then it was their turn. Green called witness after witness, Tom and Mary testifying to Cale's whereabouts, Paulson speaking to his character, Sarah Blackwood explaining that Cale had never shown violence or malice toward anyone. Even some of the ranchers who'd benefited from his horse training testified that he was honest and fair. But Stanton looked bored, like he'd already made up his mind. Lena took the stand last. Green walked her through the whole story, her father's debt, the transaction, the life she'd built with Cale. She kept her voice steady, her facts clear. Then Wade's lawyer stood up to cross-examine. Miss Carter, excuse me, you claim to be Mrs. Red Hawk, but I see no marriage license on record. Is that correct? We were married in Apache tradition. So legally, you're not married at all. You're just living with a man outside of wedlock. Heat rushed to Lena's face. The ceremony was real. The commitment was real, but not legal, which means you have no spousal privilege, no legal standing. You're just a woman who was purchased for $400 and convinced herself it was love. That's not... Your father testified earlier that he deeply regrets allowing Red Hawk to take you, that he tried to get you back, but you refused. Don't you think that sounds like someone who's been manipulated, brainwashed even? Green shot to his feet. Objection! Counsel is badgering the witness. Sustained, Stanton said without enthusiasm. Move along. No further questions. Lena stepped down feeling dirty, like they'd twisted something beautiful into something shameful. Cale's eyes caught hers from across the room, and she saw fury there, tightly controlled. Closing arguments were brief. Wade's lawyer painted Cale as a violent savage seeking revenge against white settlers. Green argued that the evidence was circumstantial at best, manufactured at worst, and that Cale was being railroaded by a marshal with a personal vendetta. Stanton retired to his chambers for all of 10 minutes before returning with his verdict. I find the defendant guilty of arson and destruction of property. Sentencing will be 20 years hard labor at the territorial prison. The courtroom erupted. Lena felt the floor drop out from under her. 20 years. Kyle would be nearly 50 when he got out, if he survived it at all. She tried to get to him, but deputies were already surrounding him, pulling him toward the back door. He looked over his shoulder at her one last time, and she saw everything in his eyes. Love, regret, desperation. "I'll wait," she screamed over the noise. "I'll wait as long as it takes." Then he was gone. Lena stumbled outside into cold air that felt like knives in her lungs. Green found her sitting on the courthouse steps, staring at nothing. "I'm filing an appeal immediately," he said. "This was a sham trial. Any honest judge will see that." "How long does an appeal take? 6 months? Maybe a year?" "A year. Plus however long after that if they actually got a new trial." Lena put her face in her hands and tried not to fall apart completely. Sarah sat down beside her. "Come stay with me for a few days. You shouldn't be alone right now. I need to get back to the homestead. The horses need care. Tom and Mary can handle it for a few days." "I need to go home," Lena said. "I need to be where Kyle is, even if he's not there." She rode back that evening, the valley dark and cold under a sky full of stars. The house felt emptier than ever. She lit the fire, made coffee she didn't drink, and sat in Kyle's chair trying to figure out what came next. She could wait, could spend the next year or 20 years working the land, visiting Kyle when allowed, believing in appeals and justice. Could grow old waiting for a man who might never come home. Or she could give up. Could sell the property, take the money, and start over somewhere Wade couldn't reach her. Could build a new life without the weight of this fight crushing her every day. The choice should have been easy. But sitting there in the dark, Lena realized something. She'd spent 17 years of her life being powerless, being moved around like a game piece, having her choices made for her. Then Kyle had given her the one thing her father never had, agency. The freedom to choose her own path, even when that path was hard. And she was choosing this, choosing him, choosing to fight, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Because some things were worth fighting for, even when the odds were impossible. She stood, walked to the bedroom, and pulled out the box where she kept their savings. $300 left after paying Green. Not much, but something. Then she started planning. The first thing she did was ride to every ranch within 3 days' travel, offering her services breaking horses. She was good at it. Kael had taught her well, and word of mouth brought more work than she could handle. She hired Tom to help, taught him what Kael had taught her, and together they built a reputation. The money started coming in, not fast but steady. She visited Kael once a month, the maximum Morrison allowed. He looked worse each time, thinner, harder, like prison was filing him down to nothing, but his eyes stayed bright when he saw her. "You should move on," he said during the third visit. "Find someone who can actually be with you." "Stop," Lena said. "I'm not having this conversation." "Lena, I chose you. That doesn't change just because some corrupt judge says it does. 20 years is a long time. Then we'll make it 19 with good behavior and appeal. Green's working on it. And if the appeal fails, then we try again and again until something breaks our way." He reached through the bars and touched her face. "You're so damn stubborn." I learned from the best. Winter came and went. Then spring. Green filed the appeal, and they waited. Lena worked herself half to death, saving every penny, building up resources. She expanded the homestead, bought more land, hired more help. If Kael came home, she wanted him coming home to something worth having. The appeal was denied in May. Green filed another one immediately, this time to a higher court. "It's going to cost more," he warned. "I've got it," Lena said. And she did. Barely, but she had it. Summer brought a drought that killed half the crops and put everyone on edge. Lena fought the dust and heat, kept the horses watered, refused to let the land break her the way it had broken others. In August, a letter arrived. Not from Green, but from someone named Sarah Morning Bird sent to Kael in care of the prison. Morrison brought it to Lena. "Thought you'd want to see this before I forwarded it." She opened it with shaking hands. The letter was short, written in careful script. It said that the author had seen Kael's name in a newspaper article about the trial, and wanted to know if he was the same Kael Redhawk who'd had a daughter named Morningbird taken by soldiers 12 years ago. Lena's heart stopped. She rode to the prison immediately, demanded to see Kael. When Morrison protested about it being off schedule, she showed him the letter. "This is about his daughter. He needs to see this." Morrison read it, his face softening. "All right, 15 minutes. Kael was brought out, confusion on his face. "Lena? What's wrong?" She handed him the letter without speaking. She watched him read it, watched his face go through shock, disbelief, hope, fear. When he looked up, tears were streaming down his face. "Is this real?" he whispered. "I don't know, but we're going to find out." She wrote back to Sarah Morningbird immediately, asking questions, trying to verify. The response came 3 weeks later, with a photograph. The girl in the picture was maybe 14, dark hair, dark eyes, delicate features. She was smiling, standing next to a white couple who must have been her adoptive parents. And around her neck, she wore a small beaded pendant that Lena recognized from Kael's descriptions, something his wife had made for their daughter. "It's her," Kael said when Lena showed him. His hands shook holding the photograph. "That's my little girl." Sarah's letter explained that her adoptive parents had recently told her the truth about her origins. She'd been searching for her birth family for months, hoping to find someone, anyone, who remembered her. "She wants to meet you," Lena said. "She's asking if she can visit." Kael's face crumpled. "I can't meet her like this, locked in a cage like an animal. She doesn't care about that. She just wants to know her father." "What if she hates me? What if she blames me for not finding her?" "Or," Lena said gently, "what if she's just grateful you're alive? What if she's been hoping for this as much as you have?" The visit was arranged for October, almost exactly a year after the trial. Lena met Sarah Morningbird at the prison gates, and the girl threw her arms around Lena like they were old friends. "Thank you," Sarah said. "Thank you for finding him, for not giving up." "He never gave up on you," Lena said. "Not once." They went inside together. Morrison had arranged for them to use a private room, giving them more space and privacy than the usual bars between setup. When Kael was brought in and saw his daughter standing there, alive and real, and choosing to be there, he fell to his knees and wept. Sarah ran to him, kneeling beside him, and Lena watched father and daughter hold each other for the first time in 12 years. She stepped back, giving them space, her own tears falling freely. They talked for hours. Sarah told him about her life, her adoptive parents who'd been kind, her education, her dreams. Kael told her about her mother, about the life they'd had before it was stolen, about how he'd searched until searching broke him. "I thought you were dead," Sarah said. "They told me everyone was gone." "I thought I'd lost you forever," Kael said. "And maybe I have. You've got a whole life now, a family who loves you. I don't want to disrupt that." "You're my family too," Sarah said firmly, "and I want to know you, both of you." She looked at Lena. "If that's okay." "More than okay," Lena said. When the visit ended, Sarah promised to return. And she did, every few weeks, bringing news and photographs and the slow rebuilding of a relationship that had been shattered. And something else happened. Sarah's adoptive father was a territorial judge, and when he heard the full story of Kael's trial, not from Wade's perspective, but from Sarah's and Lena's, he started asking questions. 3 months later, Judge Harrison personally reviewed the case. He found enough irregularities to order a new trial, this time under his own jurisdiction. The second trial was quick. Wade's evidence fell apart under scrutiny, especially when Paulson testified that Wade had been in the trading post the day before the fire, asking strange questions about where Kael kept his personal items. Tom testified that he'd seen Wade near their property around that time, acting suspicious. And Sarah testified too. Testified that her father was a good man who'd already lost everything once and didn't deserve to lose everything again because of one corrupt marshal's vendetta. Harrison threw out the conviction. Kael was released on a cold January morning, free for the first time in 18 months. Lena was waiting outside the prison gates. When he walked through them, she ran to him, and he caught her, lifted her, held her like she was the only solid thing in a shifting world. "It's over," she said against his neck. "It's finally over." "Is it?" His voice was rough from disuse and emotion. "Wade's still out there. Wade's being investigated. Harrison doesn't like what he found, and he's pushing for a formal inquiry into Wade's conduct. Even if nothing comes of it, Wade's been exposed. He's lost his power." They rode home together, and Lana showed him everything she'd built in his absence. The new barn, bigger and better than before. The expanded corrals. The thriving horse-breaking business that now employed 3 people. "You did all this?" Kael asked, awed. "We did it. You taught me how." That night, in their own bed after too many months apart, they held each other and talked until dawn. About Sarah, about the future, about everything they'd survived. "I was so scared," Lena admitted. "Scared I'd lose you. Scared I couldn't do it alone. Scared this would break us." "But it didn't." "No. It made us stronger. Made us sure." Kael kissed her, slow and deep. "I'm never leaving you again. Whatever comes, we face it together." "Together?" she agreed. Spring came, and with it, real changes. Wade was formally charged with misconduct and corruption. He fled before trial, disappearing into the territory, and no one seemed particularly motivated to find him. His absence lifted a weight Lena hadn't realized she'd been carrying. Sarah visited regularly, sometimes staying for weeks, learning about her Apache heritage from Kael, learning about resilience from Lena. The girl who'd been taken and the father who'd never stopped looking were building something new together, not trying to recreate the past, but honoring it while moving forward. In June, Lena realized she was pregnant. She told Kael while they were working in the garden, both of them covered in dirt and sweat. He stared at her, then started laughing, the kind of laugh that came from pure joy. He picked her up and spun her around, careful despite his enthusiasm. "We're going to have a baby," he said, like he couldn't quite believe it. "We're going to have a family," Lena corrected. "You, me, Sarah when she visits, and whoever this little one turns out to be." "I never thought I'd get this again. This chance." Life's funny that way. Takes everything, then gives you more than you knew to ask for. The baby came in February, a daughter they named Hope. She had Kael's dark eyes and Lena's stubborn chin, and she came into the world screaming like she had opinions that needed sharing. Sarah was there for the birth, helping Lena through the hard parts, welcoming her new sister with tears and laughter. Kael held his newborn daughter with shaking hands, and Lena saw him silently making promises to protect this one, to be there for her, to never let anyone take her away. 2 years later, a letter arrived from Lena's father. It was short, written in shaky handwriting. He was dying. Cancer, the doctor said. He had maybe 6 months. He wanted to see her before the end, wanted to apologize properly, wanted to know if there was any chance for forgiveness. Lena showed the letter to Kyle. "What do you think I should do? What do you want to do?" She thought about it for a long time. Thought about the girl she'd been, sold like livestock. Thought about the woman she'd become, strong and sure and free. Thought about Hope sleeping in the next room, about the life they'd built from ashes and determination. "I think I should go," she said finally. "Not for him, for me, so I can close that door completely." She rode to her father's town in early spring, leaving Hope with Kyle and Sarah. Her father was in the boarding house where she'd grown up, bedridden and skeletal. When he saw her, he started crying. "Lena, you came." "I came," she agreed. "I'm so sorry for everything. I was a coward and a drunk, and I destroyed the only good thing in my life." Lena sat in the chair beside his bed. "Yeah, you did." "Can you forgive me?" She thought about it. Really thought about it. "I don't know if I can forgive you, but I can let go of the anger. I can stop letting what you did define me. That's more than I deserve. Probably. But I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. Because carrying that weight around doesn't serve me anymore." She stayed for 3 days, talking when he had the energy, sitting in silence when he didn't. She told him about her life, about Hope, about everything she'd built. He listened with tears running down his face. "You're happy," he said on the last day. "Really happy." "I am. I'm glad. That's all I wanted, even if I had a terrible way of showing it." "I know." He died 2 weeks later. Lena didn't go to the funeral. She'd said what needed saying while he was alive to hear it. Years passed. The homestead grew. Kyle and Lena expanded their operation, bringing in more horses, more land, building something that would last. Sarah finished school and came back to the valley, building her own cabin on their land, working alongside them. Hope grew strong and wild, learning to ride almost before she could walk. They added 2 more children, a son named River and another daughter named Star. The house rang with noise and laughter and the beautiful chaos of family. Marshall Wade's name occasionally came up in conversation, usually followed by rumors about him dying in a bar fight or getting shot by someone he'd wronged. No one knew for sure, and no one particularly cared. On quiet evenings, when the children were asleep and the valley was peaceful, Lena and Kyle would sit on the porch and watch the stars. "You ever regret it?" Kyle asked one night. "Everything you gave up to be here?" "I gave up nothing," Lena said. "I traded a cage for freedom, a life half-lived for one fully lived. That's not a sacrifice, that's a gift." Some people would say you could have done better, found an easier path. Easier doesn't mean better, and I didn't want easier. I wanted this. I wanted you. He pulled her close. "I love you. Have from the moment you refused to be scared of me. I was terrified of you. But you stood your ground anyway. That's when I knew." "Knew what?" "That you were going to change my life. For better or worse, you were going to matter." Lena thought about the girl she'd been, standing in a saloon watching her father trade her away. If she could go back and tell that girl what was coming, the hardship and fear, but also the love and strength and unshakable partnership, would that girl believe her? Probably not. But she would have hoped it was possible. And hope, Lena had learned, was sometimes enough to carry you through until reality caught up. "You know what I think?" Lena said. "What?" "I think the real story isn't about being saved. It's about choosing to save yourself and finding someone who respects that choice enough to walk beside you instead of in front of you." That's pretty wise. I've had good teachers. They sat in comfortable silence. 2 people who'd been broken and discarded, who'd found each other in the wreckage and built something beautiful. Not perfect. Their life was hard, their struggles real, their scars visible. But it was theirs. Chosen and claimed and fought for. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered. Not how you started, but what you made of the journey. Not who tried to own you, but who you chose to stand with when the world demanded you choose. Lena had been sold once, traded like livestock by a desperate man who saw her as a burden. But she'd bought herself back through sheer force of will, through refusing to be defined by that transaction. And in doing so, she'd found not just freedom, but purpose. Not just survival, but life. She looked out at the valley, at the land she and Kyle had poured themselves into, at the future they were building for their children. The stars were infinite overhead, and the night was vast, and somewhere in the darkness, someone else was probably fighting their own battle against being owned, being dismissed, being told they didn't matter. And maybe they'd win, like Lena had. Maybe they'd find their own version of Kyle, or become their own version of Lena, or forge some completely different path to wholeness. Or maybe they'd lose. Maybe the world would grind them down and break them, and their story would end differently. But the trying mattered. The refusal to surrender mattered. The simple, stubborn insistence that you deserved more than what you'd been given, that mattered most of all. Lena Carter Redhawk had learned that the hard way, and she'd never forget it.